For those of you just joining, we're a little bit early, and I'm way too excited about this topic. So I figured I'd jump in right now. So welcome. We'll get started in about 3 minutes. There is a ton of stuff that I want to present. So I'm gonna present pretty quickly. There's some good stuff inside of here. I will likely not be looking at the text messages as they come in, but I'll try and evaluate them towards the end of the presentation after I stop talking, which if you've ever seen me present, you know that me not talking, that's a joke. All right, I'm gonna start Johnny on the spot in about 30 seconds. How am I? I'm energized beyond belief. What's funny is as I was putting together this presentation, I realized I could actually call this a significant portion of my life's work. And you guys will see why in about 30 seconds. We'll get started. All right, it is 3 o'clock. It is time. For those of you joining me and for anybody who comes in later, thank you all for your time. I really appreciate this. You're giving me the opportunity to share with you some of my passion. And so welcome to my presentation titled, look, documentation is hard. Let LabVIEW do it. And this is an intro to the LabVIEW Atlassian API and beyond. Almost. I've actually just gotten through renaming it from the LabVIEW Atlassian API to the LabVIEW Confluence API. I did that so that it'll be easier to find inside of VI Package Manager once I finally release it, which we'll talk about that towards the end. All right. I always like starting out presentations with a motivation, something that excites me or a problem that I face, and that usually takes the form of an I believe statement. I believe, as scientists and engineers, and maybe even people in any walk of life, in any corporation, we enjoy our jobs most and do our best work when the information we need to get our jobs done is quickly accessible, relevant, accurate, and organized. Interestingly enough, so there's a comment thing down here. Is everybody seeing the stop sharing and hide bit down here? I'm hoping not. Oh man, click hide. Thank you. Well done. All right, so yeah, quickly accessible, relevant, accurate, and organized, right? Okay, great. Well, turns out that's really hard to do. And why? Because documentation, we start duplicating documentation or it goes stale, it gets lost, it's just wrong as time goes on, or what's even worse is it's half true. Maybe it's unowned. So there's just somebody who wrote something at some point in time and you don't know who to trust it and who's keeping up with this, so there's no confidence in what's written. Maybe there were some conventions that were established, but they're not enforced. The content might not be searchable or even explorable. There's no conventions. Turns out documentation is hard. And I know we could all go in and fix it manually, right? Ain't nobody got time for that. And let's be clear, that's boring. As an engineer, I didn't sign up to be an engineer in order to write a whole bunch of stuff. I signed up to be an engineer to do engineering. So here we go. LabVIEW and Confluence to the rescue. You'll see 2 different icons that represent Confluence kind of. So there's Atlassian, that's the company that creates Confluence. And Atlassian has a whole host of products out there. You might have heard of some of them like Trello and Jira and lots of other ones. Confluence is their main wiki. So you take 2 things that I'm very passionate about, LabVIEW and knowledge sharing, you bind them together and you get this. And this has had tremendous impact on me in my career and on others where I'm working in that stage in my career. So what does that career look like? If I haven't gotten the chance to meet you before, my name is Chris Cilino. I started off my career at National Instruments in 2005 and went all the way through 2016, did a bunch of different things out there. I was an applications engineer. I was in DAC R&D where I owned the DAC assistant, and then I moved into LabVIEW marketing. Then I decided to try something different and I went over to Cirrus Logic in downtown Austin. And it was an incredible experience where I was the LabVIEW framework architect. This is where the LabVIEW Atlassian API was born. And it turns out that it served us exceptionally well. And it was just the precursor to what I'm going to be showing you now. Apparently there's an update to ScreenPresso. Great. Anyways, it served me incredibly well. While I was at Cirrus Logic, I became a LabVIEW champion. But before I moved to Cirrus Logic, I got my Certified LabVIEW Architects certification in 2014. While I was at Cirrus Logic, I turned Cirrus Logic into a center of excellence, and I was the tech lead out there, which was great. Did that for 3 years, so rewarding. Then I went to work in the consulting field, and I got the chance to work with some incredible guys over at Compose Systems for about a year and change. And then I thought to myself, hey, I can do this thing. And so I started my own consulting firm called Petron Way. And that was from 2019 to 2022. So I've closed down Petron Way, though I still have the website. In parallel, I started gcentral.org, which we've had a couple presentations on that today. And now I'm at DMC as a senior project engineer. Confluence has come along for the entire ride, and I have continued to grow the API, and it's served me and a lot of folks that I've worked with very well in these different stages in my career. That having been said, I want to give a monumental thanks to my boss, Dan Kimmett, when I was at Cirrus Logic. Dan, he believed in me. He saw my passion, and he invested in my passion. And I'm so thankful. My work and its impact on the world wouldn't be possible without you. So do me a solid, just check out his LinkedIn. Dan is a great, great guy. I think the world of him. And I owe a lot of people lots of thanks for letting me have the opportunity to build this API, DMC as well. They've let me build out this API, which is free and open source out to the world. And there's a lot of things to go around just in general. I want to give a huge shout out to all parts of the LabVIEW ecosystem, the LabVIEW community that give of their time and their talents. gcentral.org and the board members have done so much for our community. So I want to say a huge thank you to gcentral.org. Like I said, I know there's a couple of presentations on this, but gcentral is the first, but not only nonprofit organization by the LabVIEW community and for the LabVIEW community. So our mission statement is, we are serving the LabVIEW community by enabling growth, collaboration, and innovation. So my thanks to them, and my thanks to all who contribute your open source tooling to our community so we can do amazing things like the Atlassian API. All right, before we get to the API, what is this Confluence thing? Well, I've heard Confluence described as a wiki on steroids, and yes, I get that. Here's the way that I present it. Confluence is a means for me to capture, organize, evolve, and distribute knowledge. Okay, well, what do I mean by these words? Capture. There's a very powerful WYSIWYG editor. So what you see is what you get. That's the WYSIWYG editor. And inside of this editor, you can even co-author with people in real time. So you can both be typing in the same page and see each other's work in real time. There's a cloud and an on-premise server version of Confluence. It's very, very powerful. So we can capture our knowledge, which is great. I can get it out of my head. More than that, I can organize it. There's an intuitive tree structure of pages, and there's powerful single sourcing and aggregation. And what I mean is, one of the reasons why documentation goes stale is because maybe there's a bit of documentation that makes sense in one section of the overall organization, but it should also be in another section. So what we wind up doing is copying and pasting text. And every time you copy and paste, you are inviting pain, because now you run the risk of updating in one location and not the other location. And so you have to remember, where did you state that thing? Like maybe in your organization, you've declared what the version of LabVIEW is that the entire organization is using. Maybe it's LabVIEW 2024 Q1. Well, you're going to say that in 10 different places. When we switch to 2025 Q1, you're going to remember to update all those places? No. Confluence has tools built in that lets you declare a single piece of information like the version of LabVIEW used and then quote it in as many places as you want, so that you update it in one place and it automatically updates everywhere. That's just the tip of the iceberg on what Confluence can do for you. Confluence lets you evolve your knowledge. So you might be editing a page. Well, there is a robust history manager for every page, and there's robust diffing so that you can see the changes in your documentation. You can easily refactor and move content around in the tree or even across spaces, and links never get broken. Never, unless you delete the page. Don't do that. But you can rename pages, you can move them. It's great. So we can now evolve our knowledge, which you're going to have to do. Lastly, you can distribute your knowledge, both by web browsers on your PC, but also on your phone. There's a great mobile app. You can export to Word and PDF and other forms. And there's a powerful notification system so that as you effect changes in documentation, people can watch pages and they instantaneously get updated. All right, so that's what Confluence's value is. Turns out there's also, and now we're starting to get closer to the meat of this presentation, there's also a robust and very well documented, powerful REST API. And for anybody who's worked with me, you know, I have a very, very high standard for documentation. So when I say this is well documented, please believe me, they've done an incredible job. I'm very impressed. And this API also heavily leverages JSON. Now we start to switch into LabVIEW and Confluence merging. When you hear REST API and JSON, you add those two things together, and that should immediately trigger in your mind three things. One is the free and open source JKI REST API. I've used it extensively, and it's great. It's solved a lot of problems for me. That is built on top of NI's advanced HTTP client, and my thanks to Darren Nadinger for recently fixing some bugs inside of it and supporting my work as well as JKI's work, which wraps this, this API. And then whenever you hear JSON, please look up James Powell's incredible, yeah, sorry, Darren, I screwed up your last name. It happens every time. Nadinger. Right, okay. So anytime you hear JSON, please look up James Powell's JSON text toolkit. It is phenomenal. Those three things bound together form the LabVIEW Atlassian API. And I just recently broke the Atlassian API into two different things. It's the Atlassian API, which establishes and maintains connection with the server. And then there's the Confluence API, which lets you actually work with Confluence itself. So I recently broke those two apart. Confluence depends on the Atlassian API. Eventually, once this gets out into a VI package manager, you won't have to care about, oh, don't forget to download the Atlassian API because there'll be a dependency. Both will be up in the global repository, squared away. All right, so what is this API? It is a very task-oriented API. As a software developer, both for APIs as well as UIs, I care about what you are trying to do. So I elevate the tasks that you're trying to accomplish while abstracting away the details of how you do those tasks. I care about the what, not the how. And so that's what I present to you. It is all object-oriented, very extensible. Almost all of the API functions are all overridable. So if you want to change the behavior, have a field day. And I've got abstractions for both Confluence Cloud and Server. So you link against the same VI and you change the object that gets passed along the wire, and poof, you've just switched from Cloud to Server or Server back to Cloud. Tons of helpers, well over 100 functions. So this is a bit of my life's work. It started, like I said, 7 or 8 years ago. So I'm super excited to share this with you. Shall we begin? So when you install, you're going to get the Confluence palette, and there's already a getting started template. There's 4 phases that you're going to, or 4 VIs that you're always going to call. That's the construction. Then there's the initialization. Initializes what actually connects you out to the server. Then you do things with that connection. You shut down, and then you deconstruct. So you're going to do that every single time. Now we have to spend a little bit of time about this login thing. You'll notice it's a polymorphic VI. This is what allows you to construct an object either for server or cloud by either hard coding your credentials on the block diagram or referencing a login.ini file that stores your credentials. And I found a lot of benefits to not putting your credentials in code, like actually hard coding it. Namely, if you store your credentials in the code and you share that repository with somebody else, you've just given your password away. That's a really bad idea. So I made a system that lets you log your credentials to file. What does that system look like? Well, the first time you run any of the from login versions of the polymorphic, either cloud or server, you're going to be prompted with this modal dialog. And I put a lot of information, with lots of text up at the top that explains to you, what is this thing doing? So you're first prompted with this, and you enter the email address associated with your Confluence Cloud account, and then you hit Create Token. That's going to open up a web browser to the page where you actually create the token. Now, this assumes that you're logged in on the web to your Confluence account, and then I'll open it up for you. So you hit the Create API token. It's going to return to you the token. You paste it in the copy token below and hit Verify. Then I add your email address and that token to the INI file. And that's the only time that you'll ever have to do this. You're squared away. Now we can do stuff, right? Now we can do stuff. Like what? What exactly can we do? So I've written a lot of utilities and a lot of applications, and I wanted to just quickly highlight a couple of them to whet your appetite before we actually dive into the functions themselves. So the first one is the auto documentation utility, which is yet another VI package that is free and it's open source. Have a field day. So what I do is I programmatically interrogate your LabVIEW project, library, and class, and I generate content like what you see here. What is the private data, the description, the data type, the members containing things like the scope, is it dynamic dispatch, blah, 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 blah. And using the Confluence API, we can generate Confluence pages that contain this information. But I also made this auto documentation utility able to print out these reports directly into GitLab, GitHub, and Bitbucket. So that's 4 different places where you can generate these reports. Confluence is just one of them. So this is one of the tools. And here's a link as well as a QR code. I got lots of QR codes throughout the presentation, lots of links. The slide at the end summarizes all of them. All right, I'm watching my time. Okay, that was one example. What else can we do with this API? Labels are incredibly powerful in Confluence, incredibly powerful. Well, you might want to apply labels en masse, or you might want to see what pages have which labels. You might even want to find pages with a label and swap it with another label. I wrote this executable, and this is mine. I haven't shared this with the world. That lets me do exactly this. I duplicate the tree structure of pages on the left-hand side for a given space. Right? So this is the tree structure on the left-hand side for a given space. And then I have this drop-down populated with all of the labels in the space. So you can select one, and then you select the pages, and then you hit add, and it adds the label to those pages and the children if you have this checkbox selected. If you want to create a brand new label that doesn't exist, you just freeform type inside of here and you hit plus. Maybe you want to show all the pages with a particular label. Boom, here you go. So you select the label with, and you hit search, and then they get highlighted in green. So this is a label manager because labels are ridiculously powerful in Confluence. What else can we do? A requirements to design linker. Now here's what I mean. At DMC, where I work, we interface, we talk with clients that have very well-formed requirements often. And so we want to make sure to capture every requirement in a very traceable way. We use Monday.com to literally log every shall statement or may statement, and we assign a unique ID to it. Once we have all of the shall and shall not statements in our system with a unique ID, so the requirements are what the application needs to do, not how. So the client has told us what. We then create designs in Confluence that demonstrate how we are going to meet those requirements. That looks like UIs, maybe UML diagrams, hardware selections and hardware schematics. There can be literally hundreds of pages. There are the design that demonstrate how we are going to meet those requirements. Sure would be nice if there was a way on the design page to say the reason why I'm designing this is for this given requirement. Well, and that's exactly what we do. So I've developed a tool that lets a developer of the design document type the text, requirement covered. They go to monday.com and grab the unique URL for the given requirement, and they assign that link to the text. Great. Then they run my tool. My tool finds all of the links in all of the Confluence pages that are of type or that have the text requirement covered that point to monday.com. And then I append the specific ID to the text on the Confluence page. Then I generate this table. So this requirement, which the client said we want logging, we want it to be in TDMS form. So we gave it this ID. And then we said these designs satisfy this requirement. This is programmatically generated. Now you can imagine maybe multiple designs, multiple pages in Confluence cover a single design. Maybe one page covers multiple designs. Rather than trying to keep track of all that bookkeeping, what a nightmare. So I've created this tool that assembles, does all of the accounting, and it says here are all the requirements, and then here are all the designs that satisfy the requirements so that we can prove that we have designed, we've anticipated everything that the client has asked for. This goes towards our notion of being very accountable and traceable, and it is precisely this means by which we run projects that got us the opportunity to work with Northrop Grumman on the NASA GLA project. And we're so proud of this. DMC is partnering with Northrop Grumman for the boosters on the SLS project. And this URL or this QR code details the history and all about this project, and we're just so excited to be a part of it. Now, this notion of traceability, it really underscores or is an example of an underlying philosophy that we have at DMC, which I call artful engineering, where artful stands for accountable, reliable, and traceable. In all that we do, be it in initial engagement, design phases, development, delivery, sustaining, we exercise artful engineering, accountable, reliable, traceable, so that we can always give an account for why we did what we did. All right. Speaking of DMC, what is it exactly that we do? This is just real quick. We have 5 different service areas. We've got test and measurement, which you all are used to. I mean, this is everything NI plus instrumentation for doing test and automation. We also have a manufacturing automation and intelligence segment. Think all things PLC. We do embedded development. We do digital workplace solutions. So that's help with things like Microsoft technologies, maybe SharePoint or MS Teams, getting your organization set up. And then we do general application development. So those are our 5 major service areas. And here's a link if you'd like to find out more. All right. Now, shall we really begin? So here was our initial template. This is on the Confluence palette. So you just drag and drop and you see something like this. And that object is designed to work with the Confluence server, pages, spaces, participants. Now we're going to do a deep dive into the API itself. We're going to walk through all of the functions. All right, so one of the most common things that you're going to do is get a page. And the way that you do that is by calling the function getPageById. On Confluence Cloud, every URL has this form where it's HTTPS, whatever, and then it's your organization's name. So maybe it's DMC info, maybe it's Cirrus Logic, whatever, .atlassian.net/wiki/spaces. Then you've got a space key. That's the unique identifier for the key or for the space that holds all the pages. /pages, then you have a page ID. So this number never changes. And then you have the page title. Now, if you remember, I said links never break beforehand. Well, page title's right here. So what happens if I change the title of a page? Does that mean the URL changed? But Confluence is smart enough to be able to resolve a page's ID to its URL regardless of the title. So you might change the title name and maybe you refer to the old URL that has the old title in the URL, that's fine. Confluence will just redirect to the new URL that has the new title name. All that matters is the page ID, and that is immutable. It does not change. So if you can get that page ID, Great. You've got a permanent link to it. So I get that page ID and I pass it into this function, and boop, out comes the page object that you can do so many things with. The first thing I'm going to show you are all of the properties, the information that you can get about a page. And there's quite a bit. As a matter of fact, I took everything that the server returns and I boiled it down into the properties, this small set of properties over here on the left-hand side. So you can get like, what are all of my ancestors? What's the actual content, the text of the page? What's the page's ID or all of the attachments? Then I have everything in the kitchen sink. That's the page cluster that contains duplicates. So here's the ID and here's the ID. This is like a convenience property versus you having to get the page cluster and then get the ID. So I just bubble it up to right here. There's so much information inside of here. It's insane. It's insane. And you get that just by getting the page from the page's ID. All right. Well, I might have a page. Let's start working with it. Like I actually want to change the content of the page. You use the content property, and then you can do whatever you want to it. You can add text to it. You can edit the text. You write back to the content property, and you haven't actually changed anything on the server until you hit publish. This is another function. Publish has 3 inputs. You've got the page. You have maybe a comment, which is optional, that you might want to add for this particular publication of that page. And then you can choose whether or not to notify watchers. So now I can programmatically get, edit, and publish pages. Cool. Well, how about a title? You can programmatically get the title. That's one of the properties. And you can do whatever you want, right? Now I see questions coming in like, how do you format the content and why is ID in the sub menu, et cetera, et cetera. I'm gonna try and get to all of those things in a moment. Fingers crossed. If you don't hear answers, just keep on asking and I'll try and get to them. You can even add a table to a page. Now, the content of a Confluence page, it is in Atlassian's proprietary XML. So it's not really, it's human readable, but it's XML and it's not standard XML. So I've written some VIs to make it easy to generate the XML for common things like creating a table. But there's a lot of learning that everybody in the community at this stage needs to do to figure out how do I actually create the content that goes on the page. One of the things that I hope is that you'll join me in creating these VIs that abstract away the XML so that all I do is pass in something like a 2-dimensional array, and that's the content of the table. I have some helper functions, and we'll talk through those, but by far and large, we'll all need to learn, well, what is this XML schema? And while Atlassian did document it pretty well for server, they have not documented it for cloud. So it's a little bit of school of hard knocks. Good news is if I can learn it, I promise you, you can learn it. It's not terribly bad. So Stefan, how do you format the comment? By using XML. And there's an XML schema there. All right. I want to add labels to a page. Again, you get the page and you call my function, add labels to a page. So the labels, you can't actually have spaces in them. So what will happen is Confluence will automatically insert a hyphen. So if you wanted to attach label A, it'll actually come out as label -A in the page itself. Just be aware of that. What if you wanted to add a label to its page and all of its children? Well, you get the page by its ID, and then you call another function, get child pages recursively. This will return to you all the pages underneath that given page. You build the array, and then you process each page one at a time by adding labels. Cool. I see there's a question, why not JSON? Not quite sure. Right? Yeah, so thank you, Q. That is not, that's just the way that Atlassian chose to do it. All right, so this is how you get a page, all of its children, and then act on that hierarchy. In this case, I was demonstrating labels. Ooh, what if you don't know the ID of a page, but you know its title? Well, what you do first off is get the space that that page lives in, and you get the space key, or using the space key, you can get the space. And remember, you look at the URL, and the space key is right here. And that is the unique identifier for the space. It is immutable. The space's name might change, but the space key will never change once that space is created. So I get the space, and then I ask Confluence to return either a page that has that exact title, or I can say, give me pages that contain this word or words in the title, or does not contain. And so as a result, I have to return an array because there might be multiple results. All right, so once I have the page, again, I get all the children pages, and then we're off to the races. And that's getting a page, not by its ID, but by its title. What if I wanted to get a page or a series of pages by more criteria, like pages that I've created under a given parent from a certain day, who or where other people have contributed? Oh my gosh, y'all, welcome to CQL. This is the Confluence query language. And so what I've done is to make a VI that's query for pages, and you can feed in whatever query you want. I tried to make a couple of VIs that embody some of, I think, what are going to be the most commonly used queries, like find by label or find by title, but you can find by so much, it's insane. Now, before we press on, I want you to notice something. I've intentionally made this loop parallelized. That's because all of the pages, they're all pass by value. There's not much that's passed by reference. There are references inside of the objects, like a connection out to the server, that's a reference. But if you branch a wire, like a page, you've actually made a duplicate of that page. So if you operate on content in one, and you operate on content of the other, those are not kept in sync because they're by value, not by reference. So please keep that in mind. I am considering changing it thanks to, I forget who the gentleman's, his name is, where he has a function that will, or he has a toolkit that'll create a DBR wrapper around an API. I might consider doing that. Maybe. I need to evaluate it. We'll see. Anyways, the whole entire point is you can use this CQL query, and you can perform incredibly powerful operations, and all of the objects are by value. Therefore, it's parallelizable. This is so powerful, it's insane, y'all, and it's well documented. So here's a link directly to the CQL language. And I saw somebody asking, is this similar to SQL? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know SQL well enough to answer that question. But here are some of the fields that you can query, like return to me by ancestor, or by who created it, maybe when it was created, who's contributed to it, by a label, by macro. It's beyond powerful, y'all. And my API can take any combination of any of these queries to get you the pages that you care about. And of course, once you have the page, you're off to the races. Like what? Here, we actually start diving into, excuse me, what you can do with the server. We're going to get to pages and spaces and users here shortly. So I want to actually read through these so that you get a feel of what this API puts at your disposal. Remember, this is highly task-based. So we've gone through all of these up at the top. We construct, initialize, deconstruct, shut down. Here's the template. You can create new pages. We saw get page by ID, get page by title and space. Here's that query for pages. And that takes in any CQL query. I have a VI that bakes in a CQL query specifically for labels. You can get the children page count, like how many children recursively do I have underneath me? You can get just the next level in the ancestry, so just my children, not recursively. Or you can get everything recursively. For a given page, you can get all of the inline comments on that page. You can create a new space, query for the space keys, and I've got a couple of searches inside of there. Like you can query for only those that are global, only those that are personal, only those that are archived, only those that have a particular category associated with them. And a category for a space is kind of like a label for a page. You can get all the Confluence users, and I return to you a participant object. We're going to be talking about that in a second. You can get a Confluence user by ID or by name. You can even ask, who am I right now who's logged in? And the reason why that becomes important, imagine that you build an executable that expects this login.ini file, and you wanted to display on the UI the name of the person who's currently logged in. That's what this function does. So it'll actually return to you whose credentials were used to establish a connection with the server. You can get all the groups. You can get a group by ID. You can get a group by name. And then I've got some utilities. A couple of different utilities. These are really low level. Here are the three that I think that we're mostly going to care about. You can convert a Confluence string that represents time to a LabVIEW timestamp. And then you can do the opposite. Take a LabVIEW timestamp, convert it to a Confluence string. And then here's this really cool one, render page hierarchy. Remember this? This is the function. You pass in a page and a reference to a tree control, and I will fill it with that page and its children, lickety-split. And by lickety-split, so here's a design decision that I made for this API. I focused on rapid development, not fast execution. I could do a lot of optimization under the hood to make things execute much faster. The problem is it would then become too close, I think, to the details, so it'd be actually harder to do development. So I elevated rapid development of these utilities or these little scripts over how quickly they execute. That was just a design decision that I made. As time goes on, I'm continually trying to improve performance and not sacrifice the intuitiveness of the task-based feel of the API. To me, the priority is the task-based feel of the API. All right, anyways, this is one of the tasks. You might want to display the hierarchy in a tree control. There it is. Okay, let's dive into page functions. It's a whole palette of functions just for pages. Like you can create a new page. Publish, we've seen. You can archive a page. You can archive recursively only if you have the premium version of Confluence. You can, of course, delete a page if you want. You can copy a page just to the root of a space. You don't have to specify a parent. You can copy an entire page tree. And this function supports things like, hey, when you copy the page tree, in the title, replace word with word. So all of your hierarchy of pages might have the name or the word utility in the title, and you might want to replace the word utility with toolkit for whatever reason when you do the copy. Sure, this function lets you do that. You can copy a page, you can move pages. Great. So here we are. We're talking about making documentation easy and getting rid of the manual work it takes to keep all these things up to date. That's the reason why I built this API. You can add labels to page. We've seen that. You can delete labels, get a page's labels, add attachments to a page, delete those attachments. You can get the attachments metadata, things like what are all the versions of that attachment, who made them, at what time. So that's all the metadata. This actually allows you to download a version of the attachment. You can interact with statuses, which is a relatively new thing for Confluence Cloud. You can export to PDF and Word using, well, I've built this around an add-on called Scroll PDF and Scroll Word Exporter, which are fantastic add-ons. If you need to generate Word or PDFs from your Confluence, buy these. They're great. You can get inline comments again. You can assign owners to a page. You can figure out who owns a page. This is a relatively new feature, say in the last 6 months of Confluence Cloud. And then this is a game changer, so it's great. You can read the content version that you're at. So I mentioned that Confluence has a robust history. Every time you publish, that's a new version. This lets you figure out what are all the versions programmatically that have been published. I want to know the time and the person who published each one, and I want to know the comment of each one. That's what this function lets you do. You can even revert back to a version programmatically, either the previous version or back to the nth version, whatever you want. That's really great. And I want to draw our attention to one particular palette for restrictions. This is what it lets you lock down who can view or who can read or write to these functions. I see. What tools do you use for exporting to Word or PDF? In the Atlassian marketplace, if you search for scroll, SCROLL PDF, that's the tool that I use. And like I said, it is insanely powerful. I could talk about that. Yes, very good. Thank you. So it lets you create CSS and templates, and you can, sky's the limit. It's wonderful. I think the world of these folks, which, by the way, in the same way that our LabVIEW community has an incredible, vibrant ecosystem, Atlassian has an incredible, vibrant ecosystem, and that's the Atlassian marketplace. So if you standardize on Confluence, which I highly recommend that everybody does, you get you have access to a whole bunch of add-ons that make your life easier. We're at 3:39, only got like 5 minutes left. Okay. There are lots of page properties, like you can read whether or not the page is set to full width. You can even set it to full width. You can read the content version again. You can get the number of times the page has been viewed to find out, is this content actually relevant? You can get the number of people who have viewed the page. So if one person views a page 100 times, then the number of people who viewed it is 1, even though there are 100 viewers. So this helps you understand what's the breadth of people, like how many people are you reaching, and how often are they looking at it. HTML. Now, really, it's XML. I should have called it the XML palette, whatever. These are some of the helper functions that I've put in place to help abstract away some of the pain of learning the XML on the back end. This is the tip of the iceberg. I'd love to engage the entire community to put together functions like this to abstract all aspects of page creation. So I invite you into that with me. There's one palette I want to call your attention to, and this is for parsing tables out of pages. There's some limitations here. Namely, my functions assume that your table has only a header row, not a header column. And it also assumes that no rows are merged. So these are some of the improvements that I want to make so that that flexibility is there, both in you creating tables as well as parsing tables off of pages. But these are the functions that I've got, and it starts with this table parser template. When publishing HTML from LabVIEW, how do you convert to UTF-8? You don't. So it turns out Confluence, I've run into UTF-8 problems. I have not found the need to push. So the new advanced HTTP client returns text as UTF-8. So long as you don't convert from UTF to LabVIEW text, you can then write that UTF string back out to the Confluence server and everything just works. Although interestingly enough, I did find an illegal character recently, and it's hex 96. For whatever reason, yes, it is Darren's toolkit. For whatever reason, hex 96 causes this Confluence server to just reject the request altogether. Hex 96 is the Latin hyphen, for reasons I can't explain. Whatever, it's a landmine that I stepped on. Okay, what about spaces? What can I do with spaces? You can create a new space, add and remove participants. You can edit their permissions programmatically. You can find templates. I can get templates IDs and get all the labels inside of a space. There's some attributes like return to me the home page or set the home page. Get the name of the space or set the name of the space. Is the space archived? That's its status. Is it global or is it just a personal space? That's its type. You can add and remove these categories programmatically, and you can get the page count. What about participants? Now, what I mean by participants, this is the hierarchy that I put in place. There's two types of participants, users and groups, and then there's two types of users and groups. There's user server, user cloud, group server, group cloud. So what can I do? For groups, I can add and remove users to groups, or I can get all the users in a group, and there's some properties associated with it. All right, here's the last thing. I'm running shy on time. You can also attach metadata to pages and spaces. That can be simple strings, or it can be JSON, whatever your heart desires. If you use JSON, then you can, I haven't figured out how to do this yet, but you can instruct Confluence to use its CQL searching abilities inside your JSON string, which is amazing. Now, this is an interface, so pages, spaces, and participants all inherit from this interface of properties, and then here's the API for those properties. So you can add this metadata to pages, spaces, and participants, and you can do all kinds of things with it. I've done lots of really cool things. All right, what's next? And when can you get the API? Well, the answer is you can get it right now. So if you go to these Git repos, you can download the VI packages. Well, when do these get to VIPM and VIPM.io? Soon, right? Well, why isn't it there now? I've got finishing polish that I need to put in place. Like I said, I have somewhat of an unreasonable standard when it comes to both documentation and ease of use and things like that. And so there's some palette issues, small parts of the API, specifically around exporting to Word and PDF. Those are unstable. I'm still kind of changing them. Some VIs, there's not even any documentation with them. I'm working on my overall test suite. It was working until I decided to abstract cloud and server into two different APIs under a parent. That broke my test suite, so I need to get all that back up and running again. I want to run VI Analyzer test across the whole entire thing. There's some icon improvements, blah, 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 blah. 6 months. That's my hope. As a matter of fact, all of my code and my bio, you can find them all at Petron Way. This is the company that I used to have. I kept the website because it's got some information about me, what I'm passionate about. Like I said, all of my open source toolkits. It's ready for GDevCon then, maybe. So this is all of my open source toolkits, and then my general philosophy. This is me. I'm all about creating immediate value, but keeping a long-term perspective in mind. So if you ever wonder who is this Chris guy? How does he work? That's how. All right. That's it. Well, documentation is hard. Let LabVIEW do it. Thank you for attending. So I see one question. So we're visiting early question. This tool differs from AntiTalk, and that it is not entirely open source and focuses more on websites. And it is completely, well, so my tool is completely open source, and it concentrates on Confluence, which is hostable or is displayable in web browsers. So yes, there's that. Now, other questions, and here's an aggregation of a whole bunch of links, not only DMC and Petron Way, but also the Autodoc utility, the Confluence API, the Atlassian API, CQL help, and then a link to the case study. All right. Other questions? I think we've got like 10 or 15 minutes. And I'm going to take a hot sip of coffee and rest my voice. Just real quick, does anybody, are folks using Confluence right now? All right. Do you find that, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how helpful do you think this API would be? Like 10 is super and 1 is like, don't even bother. All right, I see an 8. 5 to 7, depending on the team. Good. Not quite sure. A skeptic. I like it. 8. Great. And of course, there's a Bitbucket 11. Thank you, sir. There's a Bitbucket repository, which also has an issue tracker. I need to go through and clean up some of those issues as well, plus enter some issues that I'm aware of. Here's another thing I wish I could demonstrate this for you all. Excuse me. So I talked about reliability and traceability. That starts to feel a lot like configuration management. I've developed for DMC a configuration management utility to assemble PDFs, stamp a version and a time on them, and export them as part of configuration management. So that's solved a bunch of manual tasks across lots of configuration items. Anyways, other thoughts, other questions? Something I just did literally over the weekend was breaking apart the one VI package into the 2 VI packages. And for those who have downloaded the API beforehand, there's going to be some rework to link against the new API. So I wanted to get that done before this presentation where it makes its debut so that nobody else has to go through that pain. Andrew, what did I use before this? I got my exposure to Confluence over at Cirrus Logic. So when I needed to do documentation, I've always had Confluence at my disposal. So I've always used Confluence. When I got to DMC, they were not aware of nor using Confluence. And so by far and large, all of our documentation was done in OneNote. And that did not serve us well. There were lots of, yes, ouch, ouch. So my thanks to DMC. I proposed Confluence. I demonstrated how it would work on 1, 2, 3 projects. That got traction so that we adopted it in my entire service area, which is the test and measurement service area. We were evaluating it for 2 years. And it wasn't until, say, 3 or 4 months ago that we decided to, as a company, change all of our documentation from OneNote to Confluence. That's a massive change. And I really appreciate DMC letting me spearhead that change. It was challenging. Quentin, how do you handle documentation to the client? So what we do, we will come up with all of our design documentation, and then we will export it as a PDF. Now, Confluence does have, this is a relatively new feature where you can invite guests to a space, but you want to be careful about which parts of your space you're letting them, yeah, I know, Matt, documentation, OneNote, tears. Anyways, so you want to be careful about what parts of your space you're letting the client see. This is where programmatically applying permissions and restrictions to pages and hierarchies comes in really, really handy. So with the guest privilege, you can let clients actually come into your Confluence site and view what you're working on, or you can create a PDF export. At this stage, we prefer the PDF export. Now, Quentin, to your point, how pretty is the export? Out of the box, it's okay. But there's a tool, part of this scroll PDF exporter is you can actually define the CSS for your PDFs. So you can make them as pretty as you want. We have invested time in our CSS to make things look pretty dang good. So I'm pretty pleased with it thus far. Here's the other cool thing. You can come up with templates, and those templates can be accessible to the entire organization, so all spaces. Or you can create a template for a specific client, so you can scope it to a space. Have I looked at Exaprom as a PDF generator? I have not. Interesting. Andrew, do you recommend it? It's brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to check that out. So here, we use Confluence just to describe processes and procedures, like how to use tools. Yep, we do the exact same thing. We've also found there to be a lot of benefit in creating designs where we'll go to the client and we'll say, you asked us to do these things. Here's what the world could look like. So here's perhaps flowcharts. That's Draw.io, which is an incredible add-on. Maybe it's UML diagrams to say, here are the APIs that we're going to give you. Here's the general flow, or the ability to create the designs has been very handy, and it kills 3 birds with 1 stone. We use those designs to paint a picture to the client of what we're going to be doing so that there's alignment. Then we take those exact same designs, we turn them into Scrum items, and then we hand them off to developers. And now developers can clearly see what is it that they're supposed to be making. Not the how, but the what. So here's your UI. Go and implement. Then the third stone that it kills is because of Confluence's ability to single source information, we can create user documents, like user manuals for the software that we create off of the original designs. So talk about efficiency gains. We're serving the end client during the sales and design phase by making sure that we're in alignment. Then we're serving the developers by making sure that they understand what to develop. And then we get to generate the user documentation when it's all said and done. This is great. This is great. And we also capture processes and procedures, both for a given project as well as organizationally. Like, how do we run DMC as a company? We have all of our standard operating procedures, SOPs, inside Confluence. What are the tie-ins for Jira? There is super tight integration. Oh my gosh, you can take a Jira link, paste it in a Confluence page, and a hyperlink with the status of that Jira document will automatically stay in sync. And the Jira document has a link to the Confluence page that quotes it. You don't have to do anything to make those things work together. So I always say this, with any tool, if you can standardize on the ecosystem for that tool set, I recommend it, because there's already tight integration that solves lots and lots of problems. Piecemealing things together is definitely harder. But Jira and Confluence have very tight integration. And Jira, oh man, Jira has its own API that is as good as the Confluence API. So you can programmatically create tickets and programmatically assign them, blah, 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 blah. It's great. It's a great question, Quentin. What else y'all got? Ha! I hope so. Will these packages be out by GDevCon? I would like to. So all of the development, by far and large, it's on my own spare time. So it just depends on which weekends I want to do work on this. And I'm passionate about it, so maybe. Hunter, do you build PDF documentation for deliverables? Absolutely. So we might finish off a project and might have an application clearly with all the hardware. And then one of our deliverables is a PDF that says, here's how you use the application. So we'll take the Confluence pages, use the scroll PDF exporter, and generate a PDF from it. That's one deliverable. Another deliverable might be many configuration managed items, like a software development plan or a configuration management plan, or we literally have 40 deliverable documents as a result of us working on this NASA project. That's just what the NASA, 7150.02a requirement stipulates. You have to provide these exports. So we do build PDF documentation for deliverables. Does my API include does my API include examples of how the tool works? Not really. That's part of what this presentation was designed to do. So there were a couple of examples of, like, how do you get a page? How do you operate on a page? Now, there are tools like the auto documentation utility. It uses the Atlassian API under the hood. So if you want to see things like, where am I invoking different functions? You can go peruse the auto documentation utility. It's non-trivial. All right, new consortium in the works. Yes, I would love that. Specifically for things like these helper functions, I think that would be great. Or if we wanted to make new kinds of reports in the auto documentation utility. I'm sure there's like a bazillion different things that I haven't thought about. If you want to help me build out the API itself, it's open source. Let's collab on it. See, I'm cool. I used a cool kid term. Collab. All right. Do I also create UML diagrams in Confluence? Absolutely. There's a tool called Draw.io. So I need to almost take a step back. Draw.io is it's a web-based tool. Confluence means a merging together. It's an assembly of things. Most generically, it means a bringing together of rivers into a larger river. The reason why Confluence is called Confluence is because it brings different kinds of media into a single environment, like videos and pictures and plugins like Draw.io. You can put them all on a single page. So you can use Draw.io in a Confluence page. But more than that, you can embed things like MS Office documents hosted on SharePoint in a Confluence page. So maybe you're putting together a budget in an Excel spreadsheet. Rather than putting a link to the Excel spreadsheet on SharePoint, embed the Excel document inside of a page so that one of your user goes to the page and poof, there's the Excel document right there. They don't have to go anywhere because everything was brought together. That's also one of the powers of Confluence. It keeps your reader in a single environment versus redirecting them to lots of different environments. Plant UML. Yes, you can embed Plant UML inside of Confluence pages. There's a free add-on for it. In fact, there's Mermaid and there's lots of different plugins. By all means, y'all, please go and peruse the Atlassian marketplace. There's so many things that you can plug into this Confluence product. Where is the manual? A lot of information to take in. How do you get started with Confluence? Thankfully, I have found learning the environment itself is relatively intuitive. The WYSIWYG editor is fantastic, and anybody can create their own personal Confluence site for free. You get up to 10 users for free. I have lots of Confluence sites for a variety of different reasons. Anyways, so go to Atlassian.com, and then you're like, how do I start a Confluence? You want to start a new free Confluence, and it's not a trial. You get to have Confluence free version for as long as you want. You can go and play around with how do you create pages and how do you use this WYSIWYG editor. Now, the reference manual for the API is right here. I'm sorry. Well, this will get you in that general area. And there's lots of great online help from Atlassian. Man, Atlassian does an incredible job doing documentation. Okay, we are now at time. Again, I appreciate all of your all's time and letting me share my passion with you. It's an honor for me to give this software away to the world. I hope you all use it. I hope that you all will join me in building out its capabilities, providing feedback, and just helping me build it and deliver it to the world. Thank you all for your time. Take care.